Rawr. Godzilla.
That's my Godzilla roar.
Rawr.
Not very good.
No, it isn't. But
It's the Horror Guys
it's the Horror Guys once again for episode 281.
with our special guest, Bad Godzilla impersonations.
Rawr.
Rawr.
Because it's Godzilla week. And other daikaijus.
Yes.
Specifically Toho week. That's the Japanese company that made many of these classic Godzilla movies.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to talk about this week.
It's Godzilla and Friends.
Yes, big monsters.
Well, what do we got?
Oh, we got Mothra versus Godzilla from 1964, the original Mothra from 1961, and we're going to have an all-out battle with Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, also from 1964, and then we're going to travel to Planet X with Invasion of the Astro Monster, which was my favorite of the week. And that's better known in the States as Godzilla versus Monster Zero.
Yes.
And then we got a couple bonus movies that are Ebirah, horror.
These two are exclusive to the newsletter at horrorbulletin.com.
Ebirah, Horror of the Deep from 1966, and War of the Gargantuas from 1966.
My goodness, that last one was awful.
It was. It was kind of tedious. Yeah. Well, a lot of these have a parallel story of people, that are, there's some relationships going on, or there's some struggle going on, or crime drama, or things. And the Gargantuas didn't have enough of that. It was just a lot of tedium of the army fighting the Gargantuas.
It had a lack of characters.
Lack of characters, and too heavy on the just giant creatures versus the army. It was a little bit more tedious, that one was.
Yeah. It was the sequel to Frankenstein Conquers the World, which is harder to find than you might think. There's a reason we didn't watch that one first.
Yeah, and the basic premise, the Frankenstein Conquers the World, it's a giant Frankenstein creature that they made, and they thought they killed it before, but they didn't kill it, but chunks of it broke off and grew.
Somehow, Frankenstein came back.
Grew another creature. So there's two of them, and they're big, hairy, Frankenstein-looking cavemen monsters.
They're more cavemen than Frankenstein, but okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, anyway, this week is brought to you by OurLongPress.com, where you can get a free book every week. This week's free book is the biography of Lon Chaney,
Awesome.
Man of 1,000 Faces.
I wonder if they actually counted. That might be an
I
exaggeration.
don't think he ever really hit 1,000.
I don't think he hit 1,000. He might have if he lived longer.
Of course, it sounds like he practiced enough. He may have done 1,000 on his off hours.
Yeah, he did a lot of experimenting. He was back in the day when there weren't really makeup artists and special effects like there is now. He just did it on his own face.
Movie makeup in those days was a fake mustache, if necessary.
He broke his own ground on prosthetics and improvising and using clays and putties and tape and all kinds of things that he just did to his own face. And if you look at the book talks about it. Some of his old things are nobody had done those things before.
And he's notoriously avoids the press.
Yeah, so it was a hard biography to write.
There's so little about him because he was very secretive.
He wanted his work to speak for itself.
I am the characters. Nobody wants to know about Lon Chaney.
Yeah.
Well, now we
do. Yeah.
Yeah, go over to OurLongPress.com because it takes an hour to read the book, an hour long. And there's a link there to pick up the book up from Amazon for free until Tuesday. And while you're there, you can pick up the other many books, biographies of Vincent Price, Peter Lorre, Lon Chaney Jr., Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee.
A history of the Star-Spangled Banner.
Again,
called Oh Say Can You See.
Yeah, there's other things that are not biographies. There's the history of the Star-Spangled Banner. There's one about wildfires. And if you're into horror movies, because we don't know anybody like that, there's books there about the entire Blair Witch series and about the Halloween series as well. These have been coming out one a week for 12 weeks now. There's 12 of them so far.
Nice.
And still going strong.
Uh-huh.
Working on the next one right now. It's about a horror legend icon guy who just died in the past week.
Roger Corman.
Oh, you spoiled it.
I did.
Running a little late to have the perfect timing on that, but we're doing what we can do.
He's a man who had a huge body of work. I mean, not just director, but behind the scenes producing and a lot of back behind the scenes things, just hundreds and hundreds of movies that he was involved with.
And we also have over at horrorguys.com or horrorguysshop.com, you can pick up the horror films of Roger Corman.
Nice.
Actually, it's not just the horror films. It's every film he directed. And there's a lot of other stuff in there, too.
And that's more about the films, and this upcoming one is going to be more about the man himself.
Yeah.
Biography.
We got all the horror films, Vincent Price, Peter, all those guys I just mentioned for biographies. There's the filmographies over at horrorguysshop.com. We like our film stars.
We do.
There's just not a lot of modern people that really count like those guys did.
You know what other film star I like? Mothra. And the two little fairy girls.
You got to sing the little
Mothra.
Yeah. Boy, I had that song going in my head for 3 days after we watched all these movies.
Yeah, if you haven't seen Mothra, there's two little teeny tiny pixie girls that are Mothra's, I don't know, keepers, attendants, interpreters.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, that are in, and they're so cute. They're little teeny twin girls,
and they got to sing the little Mothra song.
They got to sing the Mothra song. Yeah.
Well, 1961 Mothra, directed by Ishiro Honda, written by Shinichiro Nakamura, Takahiko Fukunaga, stars Frankie Sakai. Frankie Sakai, he was the number 2 guy in the original version of Samurai.
Oh, okay.
Or that's Shogun.
Shogun, yeah, okay.
Yeah, he was Lord Yabu.
Okay.
With his bald head. And he looked completely different than the new Yabu.
Mm-hmm.
But he was funny in that, too. Horishi Koizumi and Kyoko Kagawa, 1 hour and 41 minutes. Trailer in the show notes.
Spoiler free?
Godzilla is not in this one.
No, he's not.
Spoiler free.
This was the origin of Mothra, who appears in some of the later films with other creatures. There are lots of green screen and camera tricks and model use. It's pretty easy to spot for a savvy modern viewer, but it gets the job done and tells the story well. If you're a fan of the giant Japanese monster movies, you'll probably enjoy this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not you wouldn't think a giant moth would be that dangerous.
But it is.
Just flies into the fire and it's done.
No, there's more to it than that. Plus it spends, Mothra is often, in these movies, sometimes is a giant caterpillar, sometimes is a moth.
Yeah.
Depending on what stage he's at. She. I think Mothra's always a she.
I think so.
I think it's a girl. Yeah.
Weather reports. A typhoon is heading toward Japan. There's a ship out there. It's not looking good for them. They look at the map and see that they're in the old atomic test area. Why would you be there? I don't know. But the captain orders abandon ship. In the morning, the helicopter's out searching for survivors, and they soon see some on a small island and pick them up. Dr. Harada examines their survivors, and the results are outstanding. They suffered no radiation damage on that terrible island. They report that the natives made them drink some kind of juice that may have helped. Except that island isn't supposed to have natives.
It's just supposed to be barren rock.
Senchan Fukuda is a reporter working on the story, and he wants to know Dr. Chujo, the man who's going to explore the island. Photographer Michi Hanamura is going along as well. The expedition is led by Mr. Nelson, who insists that no reporters are allowed. And right off the bat, he's kind of shady looking.
Yeah, and, touching on what we mentioned before with the War of the Gargantuas, these movies have these characters, that and care about.
These movies aren't about the monsters, not really.
Yeah, and that War of the Gargantuas really lacked that. Yeah,
yeah, too much fighting.
But they all have that in common, where there's the human element going on.
Yeah. Well, the boat leaves, and both Dr. Harada and Dr. Chujo complain about Nelson, who wants everything to go through him. Nelson finds Fukuda stowed away as a crewman, and he's allowed to stay on as a guard, but is sworn to silence by the mysterious Nelson. Because that hidden secret reporter isn't going to actually report anything.
Oh, no, he'll keep it a secret to himself.
The group arrives on the island, which is lush and green, not a radioactive mess like they'd expected. There's a whole jungle there. Dr. Chujo finds a giant mutated fungus plant in a cave. He's then attacked by a tentacle plant, but is freed when he sees 2 tiny women. When he wakes up, He reports the tiny women, and the rest of the explorers want to see them tomorrow. So, tiny, tiny women.
Tiny, teeny.
Sure enough, they find the two twin fairies the next morning. They want their island left alone. Nelson and his henchmen grab the girls, but suddenly they all find themselves surrounded by natives. When they release the girls, all the natives fade back into the jungle. Just like they let them go and they all just go to, oh, they're gone now.
Yeah, well, they were protecting the girls. They were going to get violent if the girls got nabbed.
When they release the girls, they all go back into the jungle, and everybody gets back on the boat and goes home. Well, Chujo talks to Fukuda about what he saw in that cave in the island. There was writing on the wall, something about Mothra.
Well, I wonder what that could be about.
Well, we see that back on the island, Nelson has returned and kidnapped the two tiny women. The drumming natives immediately appear, but the invaders shoot them.
Yeah, unfortunately, they brought sticks to a gunfight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little one-sided there.
The surviving islander goes to the temple and calls out, Mothra! There's an earthquake and lightning, and an egg appears.
You're in trouble now.
Who laid that egg?
It's been there since the previous Mothra.
You ever notice with Godzilla or King Kong or Jurassic Park or any of these giant thing movies, when you catch one, all you do is put it on a show and a display on Broadway or something? Why is that?
Well, it's a way to make money.
Well,
That's what Nelson's about here.
It's time for the Secret Fairy Show, which is soon a big thing in Tokyo. It's a whole stage show surrounding the captive women. They ride in on a tiny carriage and then sing a song about Mothra for the audience. Are they singing it for the audience?
No. We see that every time they sing it, Mothra gets a little more active.
Fukuda is in the audience to check it out. Meanwhile, back on the island, the natives do a dance worshipping the egg. Chujo, Fukuda, Michi, and Chuyo's son get permission from Nelson to interview the tiny women. They soon learn that the women do understand their language. Not really exactly, but they're telepathic. The girls feel bad. All you good ones are going to be hurt. Mothra will soon be here. She'll rescue us and return us to our island. We then cut to a big worm swimming across the ocean.
The egg has hatched.
Caterpillar time.
She coming for the girls. Yeah.
Chujo tells Nelson that if he doesn't release the little women, Mothra's going to attack Tokyo, but he won't listen. Fukuda fights off 5 of Nelson's henchmen. He's good and they're kind of weak. So Chujo talks about the fairies, who says it's too late. Dr. Harada devises a box that if they put the girls inside, will cut off their telepathic connection to Mothra. The giant creature shows up at the dam, which quickly breaks. Back in town, Fukuda's son Shinji grabs the cage with the girls inside, but he's quickly caught himself. Nelson's embassy relents and orders the small women to be released. But it's too late because the big worm has hit land and is heading to Tokyo. The military shoots it with planes and tanks. There's always planes and tanks.
Oh, there always are, and it always does no good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Soon it's knocking down buildings right and left, and it climbs up the Tokyo Tower and pulls it down. Well, reports say the monster is spinning a cocoon, which is good because it'll give them time to track down Nelson and make him release the girls. The army gets word that atomic heat guns are on the way. That might hold the monster off when it emerges from the cocoon.
Spoiler, it doesn't work either.
Well, the army sets up the heat guns, and they all await the countdown. The cocoon burns quickly. Nelson gets word that Mothra is dead, so he takes the shield off the little woman's cage. They start singing, and the cocoon breaks open. A giant, colorful, moth-like creature emerges. The wind from its wings does more damage than the worm ever could have. Mothra attacks Nelson's country, which looks like America but really isn't. It's got some funky name. It's not really, but it is.
But it's supposed to be, yeah.
Everyone is on the lookout for Nelson, who is eventually cornered and shot. Chujo, Fukuda, and Michi arrive and release the girls. Fukuda remembers that the symbols from the cave and has them paint a great big one on the ground at the airport. Mothra lands at that airport, and the tiny women climb up on its back as it flies away back to the island. Everyone laughs and has a happy ending.
Except for the hundreds of people killed in the rubble in Tokyo and the
they had it
millions
coming.
of dollars in damage
They
to
had
the
it
city.
coming.
Yeah.
We watched the English language version, and all the actors are doing terrible stereotypical Japanese accents.
Which is weird.
If you're going to have Americans do the speech, just let them talk American.
But
if
for
you're trying to
some-
make them sound Japanese, that's just racist.
For some reason in that era, they thought they had to do that. Because they were being Japanese. They were still Japanese.
We will eat our lice now.
Yeah.
Oh, my
yeah.
goodness.
Yeah, sometimes it's really bad. Yeah.
The effects of the tiny women were good. There was green screen and some camera tricks, but they were effective. The monster itself was less effective. It was a puppet. Considering that it wasn't just a guy in a suit, it's not bad.
No, it's entertaining. Yeah.
I think you like the Invasion of the Astro Monster best.
That was my favorite.
I think I like this one maybe best.
Okay, this would be my number 2. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll never see that Mothra thing again.
Until 1964, when it's Mothra versus Godzilla.
Directed and written by Ishiro Honda, stars Akira Takarada, Yuriko Hoshi, Hiroshi Kazumi, and Yu Fujiki. Hour and 29 minutes trailer in the show notes. Spoiler free. This was quite good overall. It was in color, which is nice. It's got a decent story and pretty good special effects with the miniature fairy girls again. Godzilla, of course, is a guy in a suit, but the model work here is excellent. They really put some time into those miniatures.
They did. Yeah.
If you're a fan of the old movies or the modern remakes, this is one you should probably check out because it's fun. I'm not sure anymore. I don't remember. Was this the first Versus movie?
Oh, I don't know.
Two giant monsters together?
It might have been. I'm not sure, though.
It could be.
Yeah.
Well, what happens?
Well, we open on the Japanese coast in a bad storm. There's lots of flooding and damage. A couple of reporters arrive in the morning to photograph the typhoon damage, and the politicians are there as well, taking credit for the reclamation project. Ichiro Sakai, the reporter, finds a strange shiny thing that looks like a big lizard scale floating in the water. And soon a huge egg floats toward the shore, and everyone sees it. The boss of the fishing boat sends his boats out to capture it.
We'll put it on display on Broadway.
Well, on the beach anyway.
Almost.
Yeah. Well, they try to make it like an amusement park. Well, after the egg is brought to shore, Professor Mura comes to analyze the egg. Ichiro, the reporter, and Junko, the photographer, annoy him with questions. Could the egg be dangerous?
He says, no, it's an egg. What
Yeah,
could happen?
What could go wrong? Yeah. Mr. Kamayaga. Oh, I'm so no.
Just go with it.
I'm just going with these Asian names. I'm sorry. Yeah. He comes over and says he's bought the egg for Happy Enterprises from the fishing fleet. He wants to sell the giant egg for food or maybe a tourist attraction. Either way, he's seeing dollar signs or yen signs. Ichiro wants to find out what's behind Mr. Kamakuro and follows him to the room of Mr. Torahara, who thinks the egg is worth 1 billion yen once it hatches, whatever it is. The men hear a tiny voice and look all around, and we see the 2 tiny little twin women who want their egg back. They try to grab the little people, but they can't. Well, the little women go outside and talk to Miura, Ichiro, and Junko. They say they've come back from Infant Island and they want Mothra's egg back. They explain that the atomic testing has done to their island. We cut to the islanders who are praying for the return of their egg. It basically crumbled out of the wall during the storm and washed out to sea. Well, they warn if the egg hatches on the mainland, it'll destroy everything in their path. And not only that, but Mothra is waiting for the egg too, and he's come for it. I think she's come for it. I think Mothra was always a girl. Yeah. Well, the 3 heroes go back to the 2 businessmen and warn them about Mothra, who's going to want the egg back. They make jokes about Mothra giving them power of attorney and ask them to leave. The fairies are there as well, and Komayama wants to buy them too. Money is all he sees, and the good guys storm out. Well, afterwards, the twins decide to go back to their island, riding on Mothra's back. Happy Enterprises advertises the opening of their giant egg theme park, amidst newspaper cries that Mothra's pleas are being ignored. The locals are afraid the grand opening will be canceled, and they light up giant incubators to see what happens. Yeah, let's try to hatch it. What could go wrong? Miura reports to Ishiro that the shiny scale they found a while back has turned out to be highly radioactive.
Wonder where that came from.
Uh-huh. At the reclamation site, the mayor wants to know why they're testing for radioactivity on his land. Junko sees something moving out there under the ground, and soon everyone else does as well. The Geiger counter goes off the chart. We need a bigger chart. We soon see what's down there. It's Godzilla. Well, Godzilla, he goes straight to the industrial section of town and blows up a refinery.
Well, yeah, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. He's still a guy in a suit, but the effects here are quite a bit better than the previous films. The model work really is good. Cue the evacuation montage. He tears down the local castle and keeps right on destroying things. The government soon calls Professor Miura to advise, and he brings his reporter friends with him. We could ask Mothra to help beat Godzilla, and they've got that egg as leverage, so why not? Well, Ichiro and Junko fly to Infant Island to appeal to the Little Women. It's a pretty desolate place due to all the nuclear testing, and they are soon surrounded by red men, the Islanders, who bring them tea. It's radioactive proofing tea. It's that magic juice. Well, the king of the island says this is all the fault of the Japanese, and they refuse to help the Japanese.
This is your problem.
Yeah. Well, then they hear the twins singing, and they run over for their help, but the twins too refuse. Eventually, Mothra herself calls to hear the visitors. Yes, it's willing to help, but the twins warn that Mothra is dying, and if she leaves, she will die. But that's okay because the egg is going to hatch. There will be a new Mothra. Meanwhile, the military works out a plan to fight Godzilla, and there's a tank battle, which goes like these tank battles go, poorly for the humans. The two businessmen argue about their losses and literally start punching each other. Torahata ends up shooting Komayama in the back, but Godzilla destroys the hotel before he can get out. All the bad guys die.
They always do.
Yep. Godzilla approaches the egg and destroys some of the buildings around it. Suddenly, Mothra swoops down and lures Godzilla away, and the little twins have come as well. Mothra flaps her wings, making hurricane-force winds that blow things at Godzilla.
It flaps and cars and tanks and everything else go flying at Godzilla.
That's some wind, yeah. Godzilla has a hard time standing up, but he wants that egg. He's determined. Mothra releases poison pollen against Godzilla, which weakens the big lizard. Godzilla counters with his atomic blast, which mortally wounds Mothra. Mothra then flies next to the egg and dies. Well, the Army and the Air Force try again to stop the big lizard, who has been weakened by his fight. Meanwhile, the twins sing to the egg, trying to wake up what's inside. Back at Infant Island, everyone dances in a ritual. There's these, and it's kind of funny, they'll cut to the island. This was the one that had the big elaborate dance numbers, wasn't it?
Well, the first two both did, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they put some choreography into those.
a lot of extras, a lot of dancers.
Extras. Yeah. Well, the military drops bombs on Godzilla and then drops a big net on him as electric towers blast away. This hurts him and really gets him mad. Well, the egg hatches and the new Mothra emerges. Wait, no, it's twins! 2 caterpillars! Meanwhile, Godzilla walks to a small island where a teacher and 10 children are stranded.
Well, that was random.
Yeah, kinda. The caterpillars chase after Godzilla to stop him. Ichiro and the others grab a boat and head to the island as well. One of the caterpillars bites Godzilla's tail, which is good for a laugh. The other caterpillar shoots him with strands of white stuff, like he's a silkworm. The battle goes back and forth for a while. Eventually, Godzilla is so covered in white goo he can barely move and rolls into the ocean, where we'll never see him again. Ichiro and the others rescue the children from the island and watch as the caterpillars and the twins swim back to their home island. This is the only way to thank them is to create a better world, is the moral.
Less greedy entrepreneurs stealing your eggs.
Yeah.
Well, again, the twin fairies look good. The miniature effect is very well done. Remember, this is 60 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first of the series to introduce good monsters.
Yeah, this was before CGI. It's all camera tricks
Yeah.
and models and miniatures and stuff.
Yeah, good monsters here were a new thing, which would also be a recurring theme as time passed. Most of the old Godzilla movies, you know, one monster fighting the other, and sometimes Godzilla would be the good guy, sometimes Godzilla would be the bad guy. But this is the first good monsters.
Mm-hmm.
And the twins as Mothra's mouthpiece also worked well, even if it never really was explained. They got to be able to convince the monsters. They got to be able to talk to it. So, yeah, it's a good little gimmick.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Godzilla is, of course, a man in a suit, and Mothra's a puppet, so the combat scenes are pretty ridiculous. But you can at least tell what's happening. Overall, it's kind of silly, but we were entertained.
Yep, we were.
It was decent.
Yeah.
Takes us to 2022 short film Ghidorah, written and directed by Samuel Collins, and stars, Samuel Collins.
It's kind of a one-man show.
3 minutes, 30 seconds, and there's a link to watch it on YouTube. It's a free one. Just go watch it. It's quick and fast and decent.
Yeah, it is.
What happens?
A guy wakes up on the floor. He looks around and sees smoke everywhere. Then he goes upstairs to get a better view. He sees that he's in the middle of a kaiju attack, and things escalate from there.
Well, if a real kaiju ever attacked my city, that's about how it would work for me. I'd be watching TV and I'd miss the whole thing.
Well, that's kind of how it is. That's what I liked about it. It's kind of just an ordinary guy.
Yeah, he had no idea what's going on.
Yeah, and that's, there's this massive attack happening, and you just, at home, being a normal person,
It's a good example of doing a lot with a little. Mm-hmm. The filmmaker seems to be a one-man operation, and it's very good considering that. It's in black and white, probably to make the kaiju look more believable. It's hard to do these things in color. There's no dialogue at all, which is very common in short films, and the story itself is pretty basic and simple in what takes place. The monster effects aren't going to fool anyone, but they're not bad for a film of this length, and considering it was all done by one guy, yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, I approve. Yeah, and it fits with our theme this week.
It does.
Yeah.
What a coincidence.
Yeah.
Ghidorah, the three-headed monster from 1964, directed by Ishiro Honda, as they all are this week. He's like the king of the monsters. Written by Shinichi Sekizawa, stars Yosuke Natsuki. Okay. It's good when your name rhymes.
Uh-huh.
Yuriko Hoshi and Harishi Kaizumi. Hour and 25 minutes. Trailer in the usual place. Spoiler-free, what happens?
This packs a lot into a short movie, with 4 big creatures doing their things and battling it out. It helps to see some of the previous creature features for some background on each of them, but it's not vital. If you're a fan of the classic Godzilla movies, this is another one we would recommend, because it is fun.
I would recommend watching at least one monster from each of these others. Mothra and Godzilla and... who's the other one? Rodan.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not going to know who these... Why is this moth thing attacking people?
It would help.
What is this bird deal going on here? Who are these little fairy people?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of backstory that you probably do need for this one.
And they do pack a lot in this.
Yeah.
They cram it all into one movie. And it's not a very long movie either.
No, it
moves quick.
Yeah, they don't spend a lot of time explaining stuff.
Yeah.
It's 2 a.m. at the observatory, and there's been no expected transmission. They blame that woman reporter for Naoko for not believing. The aliens haven't contacted it. Let's blame the woman.
Yeah, right.
The aliens could sense her lack of belief, which is why they didn't transmit tonight. The chief scientist says lots of weird stuff has been going on. Why are they having a heat wave in January? I fear something terrible is going to happen.
I bet he's right.
Suddenly a UFO appears. Nope, just a meteor. Wait, it's lots of meteors. They're coming down all over the world. Detective Shindo is assigned the task of bodyguarding Princess Selena of Sergina. We cut to a palace on Sergina, where someone reports that the bomb is in place and the princess will never return. On the princess's plane, a UFO tells her to flee and get off the plane. She then opens the door and jumps out. Didn't bother with the parachute.
No.
Just as the plane explodes.
But she comes out okay, I guess.
Meanwhile, at the Kurobi Dam, they discuss meteors hitting near the dam. Professor Miura's group, same guy as in the previous film, has to hike through the mountains to get the site of the meteor crash. They soon find a very unusual rock that's very magnetic. Shindo is notified that the princess's plane exploded on the way there. A woman appears to talk to the crowd about the end of the world, and she claims to come from Venus. We see that it's really the princess. She predicts something strange will happen on Mount Aso. Naoko tells her brother, Detective Shindo, about Ebirah and the rock. They turn on the TV and watch a variety show where two men interview two boys who say they like Mothra. They then introduce the twin fairies from the Mothra and Godzilla vs. Mothra movies. They sing their song, and we flash over to Infant Island, where the natives worship the one remaining caterpillar. This is all broadcast on the TV show. So they're not on Broadway anymore. They got their own show.
Kind of fills you in a little bit about Mothra and the twins.
Yeah. Shindo sees a photo of the mystery prophet from Venus and recognizes the princess, as do the men on Sergina who want her dead. Naoko and Shindo go looking for the Venusian woman along with Ebirah. Meanwhile, the Venusian woman has gone to Mount Aso and warned everyone to leave for their own safety. She predicts that Rodan is down there and is going to awaken. Sure enough, the big bird crawls out of the volcanic rubble.
Uh-oh.
Out in the hills, Dr. Mira's men report that the mystery rock has gotten bigger. I don't think it's a rock.
No, it isn't.
The twin fairies predict that Rodan will reappear soon, and they're ready to set sail for home until the Venusian woman warns them not to go. A fisherman tells Shindo about finding the princess at sea. How could she have survived?
Magic.
Naoko,
Alien technology.
Yes.
Yeah.
Naoko catches the Venusian woman for an interview, but the assassins from the island are watching. The twin fairies are hiding in the room as well, and she again warns them that the ship they were going to take is doomed. We cut to Godzilla, out in the ocean, laser blasting that same ship.
She was right.
The assassins grab the princess/Venus woman, and Shindo and Naoko have a shootout with them as the fairies assist. Suddenly the dock explodes. Godzilla has returned to Japan. Well, it's time for another mass evacuation.
Must be Tuesday.
They must have stock footage of Japanese people running for the hills.
Screaming and going, running in all directions.
Godzilla looks up and sees Rodan is following him in the air. They're both heading to Mount Fuji. Shindo takes Naoko and the princess to Dr. Tsukamoto, a psychiatrist. The doctor says there's nothing at all wrong with the princess. She really believes that she is from Venus. The princess warns that King Ghidorah will soon come and destroy the Earth like it did Venus. He's already here. Earth's end is imminent.
Uh-oh.
The mystery rock in the hills starts to make noise, and Ebirah and his guys wake up. It cracks open like an egg, and soon a giant three-headed monster appears in the sky.
Ghidorah! Ah!
3 monsters at once? How will the Japanese people survive? And the government, doesn't have a clue.
Yeah, very ineffective.
That's a reoccurring thing with these early Japanese movies. They do not care for their own government.
Yeah, that was apparent.
Shindo appears before the committee, and he brings along the twin fairies who think they can get Mothra to help. 4 monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Mothra beat Godzilla once. Maybe she can help with this new menace. They suggest that the 3 Earth monsters together could beat Ghidorah. Ghidorah flies through Tokyo, shooting lightning lasers out of each of its 3 mouths, which does a lot of damage. The twins start to sing, and Mothra soon heads their way.
Moving at the speed of plot.
Under heavy hypnosis, the princess insists that she is from Venus, one of those who escaped to Earth 5,000 years ago. When they came to Earth, they lost all their abilities except for predicting the future. Outside, the assassins are closing in on the hospital. The old doctor wants to try shock treatments on the princess, but the assassins turn the voltage way up. We'll fry her head.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Rodan and Godzilla are fighting each other and wrecking the countryside in the process. Rodan picks up Godzilla and drops him on the power lines, saving the princess from electrocution just in time.
Very convenient power outage.
Mothra shows up, but still in caterpillar form. Mothra shoots them both with industrial silly string until they calm down.
It does look like silly string.
Mothra speaks to them, telling them what's going on. The fairies translate the conversation. They can speak monster, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's a telepathic thing.
Okay.
They speak all languages.
Rodan and Godzilla don't care if the humans all die. All the human characters head up the side of the mountain to stay safe as the three monsters confer. Mothra says she's going to fight alone because the other two aren't being cooperative. Mothra soon encounters Ghidorah. And what's a caterpillar going to do against a three-headed dragon? Suddenly, Godzilla and Rodan charge in to help. Soon, all three Earth monsters start tag-teaming the monster from space.
Okay.
Shindo and the final assassin have a shootout as the Venusian princess is injured. Suddenly, the princess remembers who she really is. But then, the sea assassin is buried in a rock slide caused by the monsters.
The bad guys always get it in these movies too. Yeah.
Rodan picks up Mothra, and they fly around, shooting Ghidorah with super silk from Mothra. Well, okay then.
Mm-hmm.
Godzilla holds Ghidorah down by holding onto its tails, and the three eventually drive King Ghidorah away. He flies off into the sky. Never see him again.
Nope, never ever.
Later, the princess has no memory of stuff about the Venusians. Will she get those powers back? The doctors can't say. She thanks, I guess we'll find out in a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
She thanks Shindo for saving her life 3 times. Everyone says goodbye and goes back to Monster Island, Infinite Island, and Sergina Islands. So many islands.
So many islands, yeah.
All right, and that's it.
Uh-huh.
It's got Rodan, Mothra, Godzilla, and now Ghidorah. It's the super tag team up everyone had been waiting for. All the big monster movies together. There's a lot going on here, and it would be helpful to have seen all the creatures' previous films to know what's going on here. Otherwise, it's going to seem very rushed.
A little bit.
It's fast-moving and doesn't get boring because there's so much going on. I liked it.
Yeah, I liked it quite a bit.
Yeah, it's good. Considering it's mostly monsters fighting on screen, this is probably not so bad.
Action-packed action.
1966, Invasion of Astro Monster. Not the Astro Monster. That's not a typo. It's Invasion of Astro Monster. Because Japan.
Also known as Godzilla vs. Monster Zero.
I saw this in the theater
release.
when I was little. Not when it was new. It was old then, but it was called Godzilla vs. Monster Zero then.
Okay. I'd never seen this one before.
I had not heard of King Ghidorah until much later. But
Okay.
it was the same monster.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Directed by Ishiro Honda and written by Shinichi Sekizawa, stars Nick Adams, Akira Takarada, and Jun Tazaki. Hour 33 trailer in the show notes. Spoiler free. This one is futuristic and very heavily science fiction, with more to the drama between aliens and humans than the drama of the giant creatures. 3 big ones do eventually bash it out, though. There's plenty of collateral damage as usual. What's better than a monster tag team up? A monster tag team up in space. The effects are effective enough for the time to carry out the storytelling, and the 2 elements together make for a fun movie that we like quite a bit and would recommend.
Yeah, this was my favorite. And it's kind of weird because they never, I don't think, say the year. It's in some vague, far-flung future where it's like 1960s idea of what the future will be like. So it's, sci-fi, but it's still retro at the same time. But
There's space rockets that can go to another
space
planet.
flight is very common, just commonplace, as common as airplanes, basically. And there's all kinds of other little technological doohickeys. And, and the science is bad, but, I liked it.
Movie about giant monsters in space, and you're complaining about science before we even get started?
There's other science that's bad in this, too. And, yeah. Just
all right.
Forgive all that. And
well, what's it about?
we open on a spaceship with astronauts Glenn and Fuji on the way to Planet X. And this is Planet X, which is somewhere vaguely beyond Jupiter. It's in our solar system. Dr. Sakurai is at ground control, and he says they'll get plenty of exercise when they get to Planet X. Fuji's sister, Haruno, says her brother is too overprotective. She's dating an inventor, and Fuji doesn't care for him. Tetsu Terry is the inventor, and he's kind of weird. Miss Namakawa brings him a contract for his latest invention, a portable alarm for women to trigger when they're in danger that looks like a makeup compact. It's really loud and screechy, but this company wants to buy it, and he's just thrilled because, big bucks.
He sold his screaming box.
Yeah, yeah. Dr. Sakari says that Planet X is causing strange radio waves, and there's a chance it may be inhabited. Spaceship P-1 approaches the planet. They land and disembark the ship, and soon experience thunder and lightning. Fuji reports finding footprints, and there's no answer from Glenn, and the ship is gone. Well, what are you going to do now? When an elevator appears, and Fuji gets in pretty reluctantly.
Oh, what else are you going to do? Sit outside forever?
Yeah. There's no ship, there's no Glenn, it's just him, on this barren landscape. Well, there's a huge underground complex down there, and he soon meets up with Glenn again. A number of humanoid aliens in weird black outfits, masks, and helmets walk in.
Yeah, if you had $3 to make yourself up to look like an alien, this is how you do it.
They're all dressed identically, but yeah, it's pretty simple. Yeah. Well, the controller of Planet X comes in, wants to talk about Monster Zero, which is the reason they cannot live on the surface. Monster Zero is King Ghidorah, who left Earth at the previous film and went there. That's where he went. Well, the controller doesn't have any way to kill him and wants to know how the humans drove him off. Well, they want to borrow Godzilla and Rodan.
You worked for Earth.
Yeah. In return, the controller offers them a drug that will cure all diseases. Well, the two men then take off to relay the offer to Earth. Except the controller laughs evilly as the men leave.
He's got something going.
Yeah, he's not honest about this. Well, there's a whole committee to discuss the offer, and everyone is eager to help and gain that cure. The humans put on a search for the two monsters where the controller said they would be, and they do soon find them. Tetsuo Terry goes to the company that bought his invention and wants to know what they're going to use it for. Well, the leader of the company burns his blueprints. They don't have any real interest in the invention. There's something going on. They want it, but they want it not to be used. Tetsuo and Haruno have dinner with Glenn and Fuji. Fuji doesn't approve of his sister dating an inventor. Glenn leaves for his date with Mrs. Namakawa. That's the company lady, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something going on. All these people are tied together somehow.
Yeah. Well, Glenn picks up Fuji and says he thinks he saw the Planet X controller on Earth. What could they be up to? They drive out to the lake and watch 3 spaceships come out of the water. One of them lands, and the controller comes out to talk. Then the aliens use their technology to lift Godzilla up out of the water and into space. They already have Rodan. Fuji, Glenn, and Sakura board the spaceship and talk to the controller on the way to Planet X. Tetsuo follows Miss Namakawa to an island and falls through a trap door.
As one does.
Yeah. Well, Godzilla and Rodan wake up on Planet X just as Monster Zero flies overhead and attacks the base. The 3 monsters immediately get violent. Godzilla drives away Ghidorah and then does a little victory dance.
This dance.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's something.
That's something.
Yeah. Glenn and Fuji sneak out to explore the alien base, and they find Mrs. Namakawa there. She's an alien. Oh, wait, no, there's more than one of her. All their women look alike. They are captured again, and the controller gives the cure to all diseases to Dr. Sakuri before they are sent home. Fuji wonders if leaving the monsters on Planet X is the right thing to do. Monsters didn't look too happy about it. Well, back on Earth, Haruna goes to Miss Namakawa to see what happened to Tesui. We cut to Tesui, who is locked in a cell on that island after he fell through the trapdoor. The astronauts return to Earth and play the tape with the medical cure formula on it. Yay! Except the controller's voice comes on and demands that the Earth surrender to Planet X or face destruction. The whole thing was a trick, a trap. And they've got Godzilla and Rodan. Well, Miss Namakawa, in her full alien uniform, shows up and apologizes to Glenn and says she really does love him. She wants him to become a citizen of Planet X so they could be married. Well, then the controller comes in and kills Namakawa.
Guess that marriage is off.
Yeah, but not before she slips something into his pocket. The aliens have brought the three monsters back to Earth and now control all of them with their magnetic waves. The military wants to use all their atomic weapons, but that's not going to be good for Earth either. But Dr. Sakuri thinks there may be a way to find a way to interrupt the aliens' control over the monsters. Glenn is thrown into the same cell as Tetsuo. Nakayama's note says that the aliens can be beaten with a simple sound, like the one made by Tetsuo's invention. That's why they wanted to buy it and not have it out there. Fortunately, he just happens to have the prototype in his pocket, and he sets it off, which drives the guards crazy. The astronauts escape their cell and go back to Sakuri's lab. They work at building a bigger version of the sound machine as the monsters rampage through the cities. The humans tell everyone on Earth, turn up your radios and play the sound you're about to hear as loudly as possible.
Are you sure it's not Slim Whitman?
It could be. It's the same principle. And sure enough, all of a sudden the spaceships start losing control of the monsters, wall fall down, the aliens explode. It's a great calamity for them, all the spaceships. And that's it for their invasion of Earth. The three monsters are still alive and now back to fighting each other now that the alien control is gone. Godzilla drives off Ghidorah again back into space, and the two Earth monsters disappear into the ocean. Glenn is told he'll be the first ambassador to Planet X.
Okay, well, the miniatures and models for the spaceship scenes are pretty well done for the time, pre-CGI, it's all models. They wouldn't hold up today, but for the mid-60s, they were pretty decent. I thought the sci-fi stuff was actually more interesting than the monster bits. There's just so many rubber men in suits you can watch.
But the sci-fi stuff was cool.
It's all good, yeah. This one's more about the aliens and the sci-fi elements than the monsters, but it all works pretty well. It's all very cheesy, of course. Almost a parody of itself. It's kind of silly at times, but it's fun to watch.
Yeah, it was.
Kevin's favorite.
It was my favorite of the week.
All right, and then that's all we're going to talk about. But if you go over to horrorbulletin.com, you can read in the free weekly newsletter that's got all our reviews. If you don't want to just hear us talk, you can read all this stuff too. We've got Ebirah, Horror of the Deep. And Ebirah basically just translates to giant shrimp.
And it is. It's a giant shrimp.
Versus Godzilla, though.
Mm-hmm.
Godzilla's in it, yeah.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Godzilla versus the giant shrimp. Yeah, that's a little one-sided, didn't you think?
And this one I thought had a little bit of a James Bond vibe to it, with a bad guy with a secret lair and a huge compound on a secret island.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And War of the Gargantuas from the same year, and we've already said enough about that one. God, couldn't wait for that one to be over.
Yeah, it was tedious. And yet, there are many people who say, it's my favorite. Who was it? Quentin Tarantino even said.
Yeah, but he's weird.
He's weird, but come on. I mean, he's got some taste.
Yeah, I don't know. That makes no sense to me. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Stop in and read all the reviews, including the two bonus ones there at horrorbulletin.com. Check out our main website at horrorguys.com. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already at horrorguyspodcast.com. Most importantly, check out our books at horrorguysbooks.com and hourlongpress.com.
You betcha.
2 separate places for 2 separate series.
And every weekend, you get a free one.
You do. You got to sign up the Hour-Long Press mailing list. So many mailing lists. We got the Horror Bulletin mailing list, where you get 1 email a week with all our reviews of the week in it. Full text, pictures, links to the video. Yeah, it's pretty cool. You get all this stuff right in your email once every Saturday morning, right after we record it usually.
Usually, yeah.
And the other one is hourlongpress.com, where you get 1 email Friday morning about Free Book Friday. Which book are you going to get this week for free? There's so many.
This week it's Lon Chaney.
Lon Chaney, yes.
Yeah.
And that's it for this week. I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
And we'll see you next time around.
See ya.